And breaking developments coming in right this minute. Government sources saying the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States. Very significant. India-Pakistan talks to continue virtually. Government sources saying India is firm on its stance on terror, and government sources also saying no precondition to the talks, and India's diplomatic actions will remain as is. And this includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, no rollback on visas. Very significant, this statement that's coming in. Government sources saying the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States, and India-Pakistan talks to continue virtually. Government sources also saying India is firm on its stance on terror and that no precondition to talks. India's diplomatic actions will remain as is, and this includes the Indus Waters Treaty and abeyance and no rollback on visas. That's the statement and the messaging coming in from the Indian side. Government sources saying that India's stance on terror is firm, and the diplomatic actions will remain as is. Remember, there were a series of moves that were taken by India post the Pahalgam terror attack. We just outlined for you the diplomatic measures that were taken as well by India. And now Indian side, the Indian government sources, the messaging coming in, India's diplomatic actions will remain as is. And this includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. Also, no rollback on visas. Remember, that was the other significant move as a part of the plethora of measures that were undertaken by the Indian side post the Pahalgam terror attack. So it was, like we mentioned, a multi-pronged approach adopted by the Indian side. We are also aware of that crucial meeting that's taking place at the Indian Prime Minister's residence post the announcement of the ceasefire. So we are going to be keeping a close eye on that meeting as well, which is taking place in New Delhi at the Indian Prime Minister's residence. Significant takeaway at this point from the Indian side, where government sources have reiterated that India is firm on its stance on terror and that its diplomatic actions will remain as is. So remember, we were talking about what happens now, what happens next, and where do things really stand right now post the announcement of the ceasefire, what happens. So India, that's a significant takeaway coming in. India's diplomatic actions will remain as is, which includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance and no rollback on visas. Let's also remind our viewers about what the Indian government has said through sources, government sources, pointing out that the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States. That's the other significant takeaway coming in from the Indian side, and that India-Pakistan talks will continue virtually. Government sources also saying that India is firm on its stance on terror. Remember, that has been the underlining of the moves that have been made by India, where its messaging has been absolutely clear when it comes to the fight against terror, when it comes to zero tolerance on terror. In fact, right before the announcement of the ceasefire between India and Pakistan as well, India once again put out that message very significantly, where government sources had said that any act of terror will be taken as an act of war. Let's also get in these reactions that have been coming in post the announcement of the ceasefire.
Occasions, it is Pakistani.
दोबारा सीज फायर जम्मू कश्मीर और बाकी इलाकों में कायम किया। अब मौजूदा जम्मू कश्मीर की हुकूमत की अब जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि जहां जहां नुकसान हुआ है, नुकसान का हम मुआयना करें, असेसमेंट करें डैमेज, और उस नुकसान का जो है लोगों को हम रिलीफ पहुंचाना शुरू करें।
As the Foreign Secretary had said, you're aware there's an understanding that has been reached to stop all military activities at sea, on the air and on the land. And the Indian Navy, Indian Army and the Indian Air Force have been instructed to adhere to this understanding.
All right, so those are the reactions that we have been getting to you. Let's also remind you that this very significant takeaway coming in from the Indian side, where government sources have said that the ceasefire has been brokered with Pakistan bilaterally and not brokered by the United States. Also that India-Pakistan talks will continue virtually. The other significant takeaway at this point is government sources saying that India is firm on its stance on terror, and India's diplomatic actions will remain as is, which includes the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance and no rollback on visas. Let's go straight across now to Siddhant Sibal for more on that. Siddhant, if you can just elaborate on what you're picking up at this point. India's message when it comes to the fight against terror and its stance on terror, a reiteration coming in from the Indian side, also very significantly that its diplomatic measures will remain in place.
Well, Molly, it has been a long day. In fact, it has been long 4 days, and perhaps history will see these 4 days as pivotal in India putting a new deterrence on Pakistan in terms of how Pakistan behaves in the future. Clearly, a message that it's a zero tolerance towards terrorism for the Indian side, and India has been able to also set a new normal with Pakistan. The Indus Water Treaty is in abeyance, but remember that means it remains frozen. India has full right to use the waters of the Indus water and of course the other associated rivers. And we saw briefings after briefings and how India was able to basically inflict a major damage to the Pakistani positions inside Pakistan. This is the first, I would say, since 1971 that India was able to strike deep inside Pakistan. It is a loss of face for the Pakistani leadership, the Pakistani military. Both Islamabad and Rawalpindi clearly will be shaken up by what has happened. We know that the Pakistani Prime Minister is expected to address the media as well very soon. And I do expect the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also addressing in some format very soon over the development. The Americans have been trying to basically claim that it is primarily led by them, but here in New Delhi the mood is different. If you look at the Foreign Secretary's address, clearly he said that it is an understanding, it's not a ceasefire. He never used the word ceasefire. Secondly, this is done bilaterally between India and Pakistan at the DGMO level, who will be meeting again on Monday. And the guns have finally fallen silent, and India has been able to not only send a military response to Pakistan, but also deal with the information warfare with Pakistan. So essentially a big day indeed for the Indian subcontinent.
Right, Siddhant, as we outlined for our viewers, the messaging and the statement coming in from the Indian side, let's also talk about how government sources have pointed out that the diplomatic measures will remain in place. What else are you picking up on that front?
Well, whatever was announced remains like that. That means that the visa system remains like that. The number of diplomats remain same in terms of 30 that was announced by the Indian side. India is not going to reverse what has happened. The action on the Pakistani misinformation machinery remains in same way. India has blocked number of Pakistani channels as well here in India. So no going back on that clearly. And this is an understanding on which there can be more development if Pakistan continues with its ceasefire, which is a term used by the Americans, but the understanding that India has been able to achieve with the Pakistanis. And it was, remember, which has been pointed out by the Foreign Secretary as well, a Pakistani call to the Indian side to tell that it's time that they agree on the understanding that the guns should fall silent.
Indeed, Siddhant, and you have been talking about the fact that India has maintained its stance on terror very categorically and very clearly. in the run-up to the kind of statement that we saw coming in from the Foreign Secretary of India as well about that understanding, we saw how India reiterated that message, talking about how an act of terror will be taken as an act of war.
Well, yes. Next time, if there is a terror attack, India will be treating it as an act of war, and we have seen India has been able to demonstrate its ability to strike deep inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And the strikes on the terror camps is a message indeed. Previously, we have seen when it comes to previous measures taken by India that was able to put deterrence on Pakistan, but it looks like that Pakistan was not able to understand what India was wanting from Islamabad and Rawalpindi. And the terror attack which happened in Pahalgam was something that was clearly the red line breached by the Pakistani side, and India gave a strong response to Pakistan on that. Last 4 days, we have seen how India has been able to strike deep inside Pakistan and damage key bases of the country.
Right. Stay with me, Siddhant, as we continue to get our viewers the takeaways at this point. Let's also get in further perspectives now from our esteemed guest joining us on the broadcast. Let's also talk about the messaging that's come in from the Indian side. Ambassador Dinkar Srivastava, appreciate your joining us here on WION World is One. Your initial comment to what we are seeing playing out now, and how India has maintained its stance on zero tolerance on terror, and how that messaging has once again been reiterated now.
Thank you for having me. India has very clearly conveyed the message that terror activities will not be tolerated. We have also demonstrated our capacity for escalation dominance. Our initial action as well as subsequent action was proportionate. We avoided hitting civilian targets. Pakistan escalated it, and the Indian action showed that we could neutralize their military targets without collateral damage to civilian population. The spread or the extent of Indian strikes ranging from Rawalpindi, Islamabad to Karachi, and of course the middle sector and POK showed that India had far greater reach. Pakistan, of course, launched very heavy shelling as well as swarm attacks, but they were very shallow and the reach was limited. So I think a message has gone home, and this is something which Pakistan military would do well to remember in future.
Right. Let's also talk about how India at this point comes across as a country that has not just given out its strong stance on terror and made that absolutely clear, but also in a way that it has tackled this through multiple measures, through diplomatic measures, a multi-pronged approach. And that also was the message that came out across very clearly to the world about India's standing, about India's diplomatic breakthroughs, and the way in which it got in support in this fight.
India managed to neutralize Pakistani support. There was no support for Pakistan, even for its Arab neighbors, Arab friends.
Yes.
In fact, it was striking that the terror attack took place just a day after Prime Minister's visit to Saudi Arabia. After that, the Saudi Minister of State visited India and the Saudi Foreign Minister visited Pakistan. There were no statements of support of Pakistan's position from Arab countries. The only support it received was from Turkey and Azerbaijan. Even China was very lukewarm, and that diplomatic isolation coupled with the with the strong military response from India, finally forced Pakistan to accept, cessation of firing. Let's describe it this way, which went into effect on at 5 o'clock today.
Indeed, and a quick word from you on the fact that this is coming at a time when India all throughout maintained that it was not interested in an escalation, while Pakistan had continued with unleashing aggression, and to which, of course, India responded befittingly and appropriately and gave out a strong message as well. But how Pakistan continued with those escalatory measures while India maintained that it was not interested in an escalation.
Yes, India not only said that, but our actions showed that our responses were very measured. Pakistan started with the terror strike and followed it up with heavy shelling across the LOCs, which resulted in killing of many civilians. India has, on the other hand, maintained its position and avoided collateral damage to civilian targets, even while it responded to Pakistani escalation by attacking, and this was the last round, 4 Pakistani air bases today morning.
Right, Ambassador, your thoughts also on what happens now onwards, now that we are looking at the way in which things have panned out after all those days of the messaging coming in from Pakistan as well, and what do you think really happened and went on behind the scenes?
I think the most interesting thing to watch will be the Pakistan's internal dynamics. This is a major, not just diplomatic, but military setback to Pakistan. And in the past, it has always been followed by, some stock taking and eventually change at the top. If you recall, after 65 war, Ayub had to go. It took time. Those were different days. But his fall was clearly linked to Pakistan's defeat in 65 war. After 71 war, Yahya had to go. That was very quick. After Kargil, there was a coup. Musharraf succeeded in reversing, and passing the blame to the civilian leadership. Pakistan is a highly divided society. Imran Khan, whose party won the largest number of votes, continues to be in jail. Let's see what is the reaction this time, because the civilian leadership of Shehbaz Sharif rests on support of General Asim Munir, and Asim Munir's prestige has suffered a shock. So there will be repercussions both within the army structure as well as the civilian leadership, which depends on its survival on the present army leadership. So let's see how it pans out in coming days. The rest are, technical details, but this will be the most interesting issue to watch out.
Right. Stay with me, Ambassador. Just a quick roundup for our viewers who might just be tuning in. We've been telling you about the reactions that have been coming in at this point and what things are looking like. Let's also remind our viewers about the reiteration that's come in from the Indian side about its stance on terror, where government sources have maintained that the diplomatic measures that were taken by India will also remain in place. That's a very significant takeaway coming in at this point, where not just the zero tolerance on terror message coming out very clearly from the Indian side, India also saying that its diplomatic actions will remain, which includes the Indus Waters Treaty abeyance and no rollback on visas, among other measures that were taken. Ambassador, what do you make of that, and what do you think is the message coming in from India through these moves?
I think it's a very mature policy. War and peace. This is not children's game. You can't, reverse the consequences overnight. And the message that we have put across is that there will be consequences for Pakistan, which are going to be long term. And these steps have to be maintained to translate into pressure on Pakistan military so that it does not revert to business as usual.